I had a friend who is a psychotherapist and has done a lifetime's worth of research, and they noticed that there was three interesting main differences between older men, millennials and older, and young Gen Z boys. And of the many differences, there were hundreds of differences, three that they decided to write a research paper specifically, and these might seem random, but these were simply three that for my friend's personality stuck out to them, was that older generations played more in-person sports. Older generations would explore more manual labor, like fixing a car engine, and older generations would have more face-to-face conflict. Now, these things are very literal and can't really be denied that nowadays, because we have great technological advancements, young Gen Z boys are operating more online. So naturally, no one would argue that people are having less face-to-face interactions, and now they are having more virtual interactions. Everyone can accept that as a fact. But I challenge you to think about what are some of the changes that have arisen because young men used to have that face-to-face conflict resolution versus now where people can hide behind a screen. What has that done to the male psyche? What has that done to mental health? Also, for the other points, men having to fix things in person versus just like fixing a program virtually, what did that do to the psyche, to have to use your brain to fix something physically with your hands? So again, having that old school conflict resolution that happened in person where you couldn't hide behind a screen, and then where you had to fix things manually with your hands, what did that do to a generation? Did it make the new generation tougher, and did that make them more able to accept new, scary, radical ideas? That's up to you. I'm simply providing the inputs that my friend mentioned. So when I think about Bitcoin and when I think about how the new generation is perhaps a little bit more scared, old school generations had to define their personalities in real time with that real time feedback from other human beings. And they weren't worried about constant judgment from people appearing virtually on a screen. So it was less passive. And so they might be quicker to make tougher decisions versus having to have everyone's feedback. So a young Gen Z person now might need thousands of people's input and approval on social media before they make a move, whereas old school guys might be able to forge forward and make a path. And with old school guys having a cohort and playing more sports in person, there was more roughhousing, and there was more of that, again, that instant, real-time, human, in-person, face-to-face, non-virtual, and that social feedback, versus now where it's a lot more passive. So I know I've explained this in a very messy way, but really the core is that old school guys had to deal with tough things immediately, in person, physically, and they couldn't do as much hiding, and things were tougher back then. And so they had to shape their identity quicker, and they had to have more of a firm grip on who they were because they got that immediate feedback, versus being able to go in the back door and slide around and be passive and looking at things through a screen and getting different perspectives on a screen and being a little bit more scared or a little bit more unsure and having these murky waters of dealing with things. So let me know what you think about how this could impact someone's choice for adopting Bitcoin, because if you have a stronger personality, you might be able to be like, I made up my mind independently that Bitcoin works, versus being that scared, unsure personality that's terrified to go into Bitcoin. And perhaps a Gen Zer might apply the latter. But let me know if you think that there's a case to be made for against or the opposite of what I'm saying.